Well, it has been certainly a very rocky start to markets, and really we've seen the perpetuation of some of those concerns that were really swirling around at the back end of Q4. Clearly the slide in the oil prices is proving to spook markets, not least of which because of the presumptions as to the expectation of what that implies for global demand going forward. And yes, you can argue there are supply imbalances which are probably impacting as well, but I think that's, the fall in the oil price is really spooking equity markets. It's spooking them via the growth dynamics, but it's also spooking them via the linkages through a number of equities which are linked to commodity prices and commodity valuations. And so that's really sort of destabilising market sentiment. I think we may well have another or an ongoing period of uncertainty. But I think what we have to recognise is that whilst we are seeing a deceleration once again in sort of global expectations, I wouldn't necessarily down or sort of heighten the sort of the uncertainty unnecessarily. Yes, there are uncertainties relating to that Greek exit story. Yes, there are concerns about the deflation environment becoming much more entrenched globally. But I think it's a case of a wobble. I don't think it's anything more than that at this particular juncture. And I suspect we will see a realization, or at least an expectation, that perhaps the central banks will be perceived to be there as a backstop. So it may well be the case that those that have been hoping for early moves from the Fed may well be forced to push some of those expectations back should this instability prove to be more than just a 2 or a 3 day wonder. Well, I think it is a very difficult problem, and I think the UK political dynamic is certainly going to be one which is going to be playing out very large in terms of the performance of sterling in particular over the course of the next 4 to 5 months as we run into that May the 7th election. But if we don't see any signs of any alliance between Merkel and Cameron, then it does politically make life increasingly more difficult for the government. And of course that may well have an influence on its stance regarding the EU in terms of its election campaign. And I think the reality is, of course, that international investors looking in at the UK political scenario into that election will probably not like what they're seeing and what they're anticipating. We may see either a left-wing Labour administration, which could be seen as less business-friendly, or if you were to see some degree of Conservative-led administration with a fairly Eurosceptic tone, that also doesn't augur well for long-term business investment. So overall, I think there are a number of headwinds for UK PLC, both economically and politically, to withstand as we go towards that May election.